the return home. He pressed his forehead against the door frame, inhaling deeply before turning the handle. As he stepped inside his small apartment, he could almost feel the shadows lengthen. The lights were still off. He had left them that way on purpose, perhaps because walking into darkness felt less accusatory. He shut the door and stood silently, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant traffic of the city outside. Then, pulling off his jacket, he sank onto the couch and let out a trembling breath. It had been a draining day at work, but that was hardly the main source of his exhaustion. He glanced at the 3 tightly knotted garbage bags sitting by the hallway closet. No matter how many times he convinced himself he was done with it all, those bags were a haunting reminder that he was never really done.
Sam.
His name was Sam, a 28-year-old software developer known to his coworkers as a methodical, quiet type who got things done efficiently. No one knew about this other side of him, the side that embraced something that felt both comforting and deeply shamed in his own mind. He looked down at his hands. For years, he had tried to keep them strong and calloused, trying to be what he assumed he ought to be. There was no obvious reason he could pinpoint that explained why he felt such a pull to dresses, skirts, makeup, and the persona he had privately named Sarah. It had just been there, slowly crystallizing in adolescence and steadily growing in power until it felt like a constant, irresistible whisper at the back of his mind. Even now, after all these years of hiding, each time he wore a skirt or wig, he felt a deep sense of calm that he never found anywhere else. The purge. He had tried purging everything again just a few days ago. That night, he stuffed his clothes, wigs, and makeup in black plastic bags, drove out far beyond city limits, and dropped them in a dumpster outside a strip mall. He recalled how his hands shook as he let go of the items. The relief was immediate. He felt lighter, convinced that all his confusion and turmoil would vanish with that act of disposal. But almost as soon as he got back into the car and closed the door, a hollow feeling began to creep in. By the time he reached his apartment, he felt he had lost an important piece of himself. That was the moment the regret started sneaking back, quietly, but persistently. Days had passed with him trying to ignore the hollow ache. He dug into extra coding projects at work, staying late when no one was around to question why. But it was inevitable. He found himself late at night scrolling through online clothing stores, gaze lingering on dresses or skirts, checking each seam and style. One click led to another until he found himself with a new order confirmation on the screen, heart thudding in his chest. He told himself again that this was the last time. Only a single piece of clothing, not a full ensemble. Yet he knew that once the barrier cracked, it wouldn't stop with one skirt. The new skirt. Now the new item had arrived in a small, nondescript package delivered that morning. It was a simple black skirt, knee-length, classy enough to be worn to an office if he ever chose to present differently. He couldn't decide if that was the life he longed for, or something that terrified him. As evening wore on, he opened the box, hesitantly removed the skirt from its wrapping, and shook it out. The fabric felt soft under his fingertips. There was a part of him that wanted to cry out in frustration because he had once again unraveled his own promise. And yet when he slipped into it, he felt that familiar wave of calm. "Why can't I just stop fighting this part of me?" he whispered, though his voice was muffled by the stillness of the apartment. "Erica." His phone buzzed then, snapping him from his thoughts. It was a text message from his longtime friend, Erica, a woman around his age with whom he had shared many frustrations about life, though he had never mentioned the crossdressing. "K, you okay? Haven't heard from you in a while. Let's meet soon, *." He typed a quick response. "Sorry, been swamped with work. Let's meet up tomorrow after I clock out, *." Then he switched his phone to silent, stood there with the skirt still on, and allowed himself a moment to breathe. Maybe he thought it was time to stop burying this. But the idea of telling someone was terrifying. He left the skirt on, sat down at his desk, and pulled a worn journal from a drawer. He ran his fingers over the cover, recalling how he had begun writing in it a year ago after the first major purge. Tonight, he made a new entry, describing the wave of calm that came over him when he slipped on the skirt. He wrote of the deep conflict he felt and ended with the words, "I don't know how to stop this, but Maybe the real question is whether I should stop. The cafe. The next day, he powered through his tasks at the software firm. When 5 p.m. rolled around, Erica was standing by his desk, tapping her foot. She had short wavy hair and wore a leather jacket. She greeted him with a quick hug and that mischievous grin she always sported. "You've been ignoring me," she teased as they walked to the elevator. "I was beginning to worry you'd moved away or something." He forced a laugh. "Just busy. You know how it goes." They found a table in the corner of a nearby cafe. The chatter of people and the hum of the espresso machine gave them a sense of anonymity. "So talk to me," Erica said, leaning on her elbows. "What's been keeping you tied up?" He considered lying, giving her the standard line about deadlines at work. But the words refused to come out. I've been dealing with some stuff," he finally said. "Like personal stuff." "Like what?" Erica pressed. "You never used to hesitate telling me these things." He cleared his throat. "It's personal, but I guess you could say I'm wrestling with part of who I am. And it hasn't been easy." She held his gaze. "We've been friends since college. I don't think anything about you could scare me away. But if you're not ready to talk, that's okay." He gave her a half smile. "I appreciate that. I really do. Maybe soon, but I need a bit more time." Melissa visits. A week later, Sam received a text from his younger sister, Melissa, who is 24 and a graduate student. She wanted to visit the city and stay with him for a few days to look for internships. He loved her, but instinctively, panic set in. He had to make sure there was nothing out in the open that might raise questions. He'd have to move the garbage bags somewhere safe, or finally throw them out. The day before Melissa arrived, Sam placed the bags in his trunk and drove around for nearly an hour, trying to work up the nerve to discard them. He ended up at a rundown strip of stores in a quieter part of town. He hauled them out and one by one dropped them into a large dumpster behind a closed pizzeria. He stood there for a moment, staring at the rusted metal. Then he forced himself to climb back into the driver's seat and leave. When he got home, he opened his closet and checked the dresser drawers to confirm he had truly removed all hints of Sarah. It was all gone except for that one skirt he had purchased recently. He ran his thumb along the fabric. Could he bring himself to throw it away? Instead of deciding, he folded it neatly and tucked it behind a stack of old jeans in the bottom drawer. Melissa arrived the next morning, bustling through the door with a bright smile. "Hey, big brother," she called out, waving cheerfully. He grinned. "Good to see you. It's been too long." The boutique. On the second day of her visit, Melissa came back from a walk around the neighborhood brimming with excitement. "Hey, guess what? I found this consignment boutique down the road. It looks so cool, and they have great prices. Let's check it out together." His heart skipped a beat. The last place he wanted to go was a clothing store, especially with her. But he couldn't exactly refuse without raising suspicions. "Sure," he said calmly. "I could come with you." Within an hour, they were inside the boutique. Melissa was in her element, flipping through hangers and chatting happily about styles. Sam kept his hands in his pockets, trying not to let his eyes linger too long on the skirts or dresses. At one point, Melissa pulled a teal skirt off the rack, studied it, then turned to him. "This is so adorable, but it's not really my size. You know, if..." She froze mid-sentence, as if something clicked in her mind. But she immediately shook it off. "Never mind," she said. "I'm just talking nonsense." He felt something unsettling in her expression, almost as if she had begun to suspect. But she quickly moved on. That night, as Melissa slept in the living room on the fold-out couch, Sam stared at the bedroom ceiling. He was too jumpy to fall asleep right away, so he grabbed his old journal and tiptoed to the kitchen to write quietly. The confession. On Melissa's last day in the city, they grabbed breakfast at a local diner. As they polished off their coffee, she glanced up at him, and her tone grew serious. "Sam, I'm going to ask you something, and if I'm off base, just tell me. But I've noticed you seem on edge. Are you sure everything's okay?" He shifted uncomfortably. "It's just stress. Work deadlines, you know." She looked unconvinced. "Right. Work deadlines. If that's what you say, then I'll trust you." She paused. But if there's something else, you know you can trust me, right? He forced a reassuring smile. Of course. Thank you. After she left, Sam returned to an empty apartment. He walked to his bedroom, pulled out the black skirt, and held it to his chest. That weekend, Erica invited him out to a bar with some of her coworkers. At one point, he excused himself to stand outside for a moment of fresh air. Erica found him leaning against the side of the building, watching cars go by. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, she said softly. What's going on? He looked away. I'm just tired. You've been tired for months. Let's talk. Seriously. He swallowed, heart pounding. Maybe it was the environment, the anonymity of the city night, or the whiskey he had sipped earlier. But he decided to speak. There's something that's been part of my life for years, he began, voice trembling slightly. It's a part of me that I've always felt I should hide. She nodded slowly, giving him space. He paused, then forced the admission out. I wear clothes typically marketed to women. Dresses, skirts, sometimes makeup. I feel better when I do it calmer. But I also feel a lot of confusion around it. Acceptance. Her expression was unreadable at first. She blinked, then took a half step closer. You like to crossdress. He winced at the word, though he knew that was the simplest term for it. Yes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Erica slowly reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. Sam, I wish you'd told me sooner, because honestly, I don't think there's anything weird about that. If it makes you feel calm, that's something you should have the right to explore. He exhaled in relief, tears edging his eyes. I've spent so many years throwing it all away, then buying it all back, he said. I get so scared that someone will find out. I'm ashamed, even though a part of me knows I shouldn't be. She looked around to make sure no one was eavesdropping, then spoke gently. Look, I can't pretend I understand every nuance of what you're going through, but you're not doing anything wrong. If it makes you feel at peace, you shouldn't have to hide in misery. I'm here, okay? Tears rolled down his cheeks, and he turned away quickly, wiping them with the back of his hand. It was a moment he had never allowed himself before, crying in front of a friend, letting the truth out. Melissa knows. A few nights later, Sam mustered the courage to have a phone call with Melissa. He sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, heart hammering in his chest. Hey, big brother, Melissa answered brightly. How's life? He gave her the usual updates, then paused. I don't want to freak you out, but I have something I need to tell you. She was silent for a moment. All right, I'm listening. He inhaled slowly. Do you remember when we went shopping at that consignment store? You showed me that teal skirt and said it was adorable. Yeah, sure, she replied cautiously. There's a reason I looked so uncomfortable, he said, speaking each word carefully. I've been dealing with a pattern for years now where I buy clothes that are associated with women's fashion, dresses, skirts, then I panic and throw them all away. Then I buy them again. It's this endless cycle. You like wearing that kind of clothing? He sighed. I do. It's not a hobby I chose on a whim. It's more like I feel right when I wear it, no matter how much shame or confusion I carry. She took a moment, then to his surprise, she let out a soft laugh. Sam, I'm not laughing at you. My heart is kind of melting because I'm relieved you finally told me. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like you couldn't share. The gift. Over the next few weeks, Sam tried small experiments. He would wear the scarf Erica had given him with a casual sweater to a coffee shop. Nobody gave him strange looks. One Saturday, Erica invited him to a local music festival. She even suggested he wear something that made him feel comfortable if he wanted to push his boundaries. After mulling it over, he decided to wear a casual blouse and a pair of fitted jeans. With a thudding heart, he met Erica near the entrance. She looked him up and down, gave him a thumbs up, and they headed inside. By the end of the festival, he felt a mixture of exhilaration and exhaustion. It was the first time he had worn something close to his preferred style in such a large public space, and nothing catastrophic had happened. I'm proud of you, Erica said as they left. He lowered his gaze, smiling shyly. Thanks for pushing me to come. I think I needed this. Breaking the cycle. In the following days, Sam tried to hold on to that feeling. He let himself keep the skirt, the blouse, the scarf, and a few other items he had acquired. He made a promise, written down in his journal, that he would resist the urge to purge even if shame flared up again. Instead, he would reach out to Erica or to Melissa if he felt overwhelmed. Of course, the temptation to purge remained. One stressful evening, after a tough day at work, he stood in his bedroom, glowering at his clothes, feeling that suffocating sense of guilt and fear. His hand hovered over the wastebasket, but then he recalled Erica's voice telling him he didn't have to hide in misery. He remembered Melissa's words, "I wish you'd told me sooner." He closed the dresser drawer instead. Then he shakily got into bed. Over time, he discovered that the longing to purge often coincided with spikes in stress. Recognizing that pattern helped him manage it. Slowly, the days between each wave of panic grew longer. He began to breathe easier. The mirror. One evening, months after that fateful conversation outside the bar, he invited Erica over for dinner. After they ate pasta and chatted about random topics, she brought up the subject. "So, how's it going with the cycle? Have you felt the urge to purge lately?" He took a sip of water, then shook his head. "Not really. Or I guess a little sometimes, but it's not the same as before. It doesn't control me. I realize that I have an option to talk to you or to Melissa, or to just ride out the feeling until it passes. So far, I haven't tossed anything in months." She smiled. "That's a big deal, Sam." He nodded, a slight smile crossing his face. When Erica left that night, he found himself in front of the mirror wearing the black skirt that had once been both a source of comfort and a trigger for shame. Now it was simply part of his closet. He gazed at his reflection, remembering how many times he had asked, "Why can't I just stop fighting this part of me?" He still didn't have a neat, crisp answer, but he realized he might not need one. This was who he was, and in the small, meaningful steps he had taken, he had found a measure of peace. He sat on the couch, legs crossed, the soft fabric brushing against his skin, and let out a breath he felt he had been holding for years. The garbage bags were gone, but the need for Sarah was still here, quiet, constant, and oddly reassuring. Instead of dreading its return, he allowed himself to coexist with it. In that moment, he felt the raw, realistic weight of life, but also a subtle sense that he was learning, piece by piece, to stop waging war on something that had always been part of him. He turned off the living room lamp, letting moonlight drape the walls in pale blue. Then he hugged a throw pillow and let his eyes close. In the hush of that evening, there was no frantic shame, no fear knocking at his door. There was only the gentle realization that for once, he had not purged. He had chosen to stay. And that small shift in the quiet of his apartment made all the difference. Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.